Welcome, ladies, gentlemen, and all you lovely chaotic neutrals to this new episode of Dragons and Diatribes. I'm one of your hosts, Ed, here, and I'm joined by my co-host, Jared.
Always good to sit down and chat.
And Ethan's missing once again today. Just life, a little bit busy. It's been a couple weeks since we had the chance to record. So Jared came down here really to Texas, where I am a couple weeks ago. I think that was after the last podcast, right?
Yeah, after.
Yeah, came and joined me for some Clock Tower, which we talked about during the last episode, and
yeah, it was good. It was good.
Pretty fun time. Yeah, I'm coming off. I was talking before we started recording about playing several games yesterday, so definitely a good time. But we were kind of mulling over what to talk about, and I kind of pitched out. I binge watched the live action One Piece in about 2 days, and that kind of had me thinking about works in adaptation. Be it from a play or a book, putting it into movie form or anime into live action. Just kind of the idea of adaptation was a little interesting to me. It also combined with the adaptation of a tabletop game with the D&D movie into a movie. So I was thinking we could, chat about that. Maybe some adaptations that we liked, or that we have liked, some that we haven't. Maybe try and dig in a little bit into what makes a good adaptation.
Mm-hmm.
That seems to be because that's what I was thinking we could dive into. So, I guess in terms of One Piece, I haven't watched the anime myself, and I think you haven't started the live action yet, and
No.
Ethan was going to be kind of the bridge.
Yep.
Because he'd seen both, so I guess we'll have to get his opinion next time. But I for one, found it to be pretty sensational. Now I haven't seen the anime, obviously, but I've seen anime broadly, and the live action show kind of has this real feel of being, like an anime. It's shot like the fights are shot in the same way. There's kind of these pauses, when people are either monologuing or talking to somebody else, and the enemy just kind of gives them time to do it.
Yeah, of course.
And then they have their fight. And, you'd think a lot of the stuff would look pretty unnatural in live action, but it obviously looked a little bizarre, but that it was just kind of the stylistic. It's kind of like watching anime itself. It sort of bled into the background. Like you stop noticing the style, in the sense of, you stopped asking questions about why they were looked a certain way or doing certain things.
Yeah,
and
you kind of just move past it and focus on the story and the interaction instead of just trying to be like, you don't want to overanalyze anything,
Exactly right. And it was pretty fresh, I think, because there's been a lot of TV show adaptations. We talked about The Witcher,
Yep.
I think, last time, and just ones that seem to fail.
Traumatically is usually how it is.
Pretty spectacular fails. But I guess I'll just start and see if there's any. I think we could start with the fun ones and talk about the terrible adaptations a little bit.
There's so many. And like it's not even just TV shows, it's movies. Like I've been playing a lot of Assassin's Creed, the new one recently, and I was reminded because I was on Hulu that there's an Assassin's Creed movie, and it's just it's terrible. It's so bad.
I think I watched the CinemaSins for it, and it seemed a little bit ridiculous. I never saw the Assassin's Creed movie, but I've watched playthroughs of the games, and they're pretty cool. But did you watch the Assassin's Creed movie?
I actually really didn't. I skimmed through it, and it was just like it was just too much. Like the story kind of gets like thrown out the window because they have to condense a 70 hours worth of gameplay into 2 hours of watching. So
Yeah.
it's always just like super to the point. They move very quickly. There's no like real character development. It's all just like bop 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 bop, and it's like start, conflict, progression, resolution, end, or
Well, there's always a
climax,
there's
progression, whatever.
there's like like it's just kind of been generally the case that along with anime, video games are very tough in either movie or show adaptations. And it's funny that you mentioned that too, because now that I'm thinking about it, we have this anime live action adaptation with One Piece that seems to be doing really well. And then the other, pretty recently we had the Mario movie come out as well, which was, in terms of adaptation of the games, I thought was really pretty spot on. Like, it wasn't trying to be anything other than just, Mario.
Mm-hmm.
And it succeeded in being what I think it was trying to do.
I never saw it, so if you want to elaborate on that.
Well, and I guess this is what I was maybe going to talk about with like what makes a good adaptation. So I guess we'll start with the good ones.
Dive
maybe,
into it.
We're on it already.
We can flip back and forth. It doesn't really matter to me. I'm sure we will naturally. So,
but there's like a sense of like a good adaptation kind of. I think first off, it has to be well intentioned. I think that needs to be the primary thing. Like with The Witcher, we talked about there was a lot of dislike towards the actual, source material and the content, which obviously is going to harm the adaptation. But there also needs to be, I think, an understanding of the spirit, I guess, of the original, and sort of the themes that the original's like trying to engage with, and actually kind of angling the same perspective, I would say, even as the original on those themes. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a beat for beat remake. And one that was really interesting is, I don't know if you ever read or watched Ready Player One.
No, I actually never did. I heard it was really good. I heard the book was phenomenal.
So yeah, the book is phenomenal, and the movie's quite good too. But they're very, very different. But even just in terms of the plot, like a lot of things about the actual events are kind of, they're shortened and they're made a little more broadly applicable. Because like in the book, I guess it's not really a spoiler. It's the first chapter, but the first challenge in the book, because the book's basically a sequence of challenges. People hunt. The main character is hunting down these different quests, essentially, in this virtual world. And the first one is essentially a beat for beat, traveling through the Tomb of Horrors from like AD&D in the book, and he knows the module essentially, so he's able to go through it, and that's kind of given some build up throughout, because you can take the time to do that with a book. With a movie, it has nothing to do with the Tome of Horrors. It's like a race that's kind of been discovered already, but the way to defeat it is kind of like thematically similar to the way you have to beat the Tomb of Horrors in the book, and basically it was well intentioned, and even though they changed a lot about it, they seem to understand the spirit of the book and the reasons why it was done. So even though they changed it and they altered it in some serious ways, some not so serious ways, and they kept pretty faithful in terms of like the way the characters behaved and things like that. Just the events were changed, but they seem to have an understanding or an appreciation for the original, and they kind of changed it in ways they could. And that's, I think, kind of contrary to another really bad adaptation with Percy Jackson.
Yeah, those movies were terrible, which is so weird to think, because like for me, like the more complex a world is, and the more like complex the series itself is, like it's a kid's book. Let's be honest. It's a children's book. Like it should be very, very easy to make that rendition work. and they just for some reason just couldn't stick to it. Like it seemed like a really really simple way. Like Lord of the Rings is not a children's book. Like that.
Yeah.
Like it's just not. There's themes that like would go way over their heads. But like Percy Jackson, the world starts out super fucking small, and it's a children's book. And for some reason, that the first movie just couldn't seem to grasp like the very very simple things of like it's this kid and he's kind of lost in this new world and he doesn't really understand. But these are his three friends or his two friends and yada yada. Here's their adventure. It could have just been like an adventure-esque movie, and instead it was just like it felt like a stumble. Like the whole thing was a stumble.
Yeah. And it did feel like that. And I think the reason why is because they changed some things. And I got the sense that the creators of the movie didn't really get the books, which is kind of what you're pointing towards. They kind of produced an adaptation, but they just, first off, left off some key plot details. They changed certain ways characters are, including, two of the three main characters are kind of behave entirely differently than they do in the books. I mean, Percy's not that close either.
No,
he's probably the closest out of the three. So, I mean, I'm interested to see. I don't know if you've seen this. There's a Disney Plus Percy Jackson series.
I have not.
The first trailer's out. It's coming out on this December. So it'll be interesting to compare. But that one is kind of contrasting to Ready Player One. Ready Player One, I got the sense that the adapters understood, the work and, put it, whereas the Percy Jackson, writers, they for the show, that is, the movies, they kind of missed the key elements that made the book what it was, that because it is a young adult book, and it's driven by the characters primarily, and they messed up the characters first off, and then kind of the whole purpose and arc of the journey they changed from the plot of the book, which it just is kind of resulted in what I think is obviously a terrible adaptation, but it's also just kind of a lackluster film.
Yeah, and like that's how I kind of measure it, right? Because there's no real way to measure it besides like you're sitting there watching it and you know what's supposed to happen, and even if it doesn't happen exactly the same way, you're interested to see how they do it, and then if it still feels like jumbled or like what's not threatened but like forced, like. Yeah. If a thing feels forced and the dialogue is kind of choppy and the dialogue doesn't seem to flow and the characters are entirely different than how you think, you're like, why'd they do this? Or like, why didn't they do this? Kind of just, you can feel something's off.
And that's kind of the way I what I think about with adaptation is it's a little bit like translation. And I mean, like in the sense of, doing a translation of a text. Mm-hmm. Right, like reading a translation of a Russian novel or something, right? Is like there's kind of traditionally two ways of translating. There's the one-for-one kind of literal translation, right? You translate the words as they're said, nothing else. And then there's, I guess, more the sense,
the context
translation, the contextual one, which. I mean, every translation that you read as a book, there's going to be some element of sense of it, like the way it, the sense of it as opposed to the literal phrasing, because there's just going to be idioms that are not used, in English that make it, without the context makes no sense. Like the Russian, the one I think in Russian is that the Russian phrasing for like if I'm, I would say good luck and you would say thank you is like how we do it in English. And basically the literal translation of what they say in Russian is I would say no fur, no feather. And you would say the devil, which just, means what it means to them. Like it's good luck and it's, thank you.
It's good luck, but you're like a direct translation is just not correct.
Yeah, and you're like, what does that mean? Because it doesn't actually tell you anything. And The other one that's really interesting is like in the Bible, the verse. I'm forgetting which verse it is, but essentially it's the Lord is kind and merciful. That's the classic line, or the that's the one. And essentially, the literal translation is like God is long of nose and something else, because it's like idiomatic. But obviously, it doesn't make any sense if you don't understand the idiom. But in terms of an adaptation as a translation, that's kind of what I mean by the spirit of it getting passed through. Right. You don't need to be doing a literal one-to-one, shot-to-shot translation,
right.
though you
like
can.
When someone tells a good joke and you say that's a knee slapper, they don't mean it actually hit you in the knee. It means it's so funny that was like your innate reaction was like to hit your knee and laugh, right? It's like, yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. So, but in terms of like the adaptations, you have people, you can do a shot for shot, just mirroring the original, but that doesn't really work very well, especially the anime ones. I watched a video recently. He was talking about there's a whole subgenre of movies in Japan that are actually like anime adaptations that are just shot for shot live action versions of the anime.
Like the dialogue's the same and everything. They just copy it.
Even the camera angles, like they just copy everything, and they all suck because it's doesn't. That's not how you translate it. Is one to one when you're doing anime into a show. You need to sort of read into the. You need to translate it from medium to medium, and because doing something in an animated film implies something being done one way, and you can translate that to how you would do that in a live action sense. Or
the one thing that I really hate about live action adaptations is, especially in the context of things that have a lot of like thoughts, because like in an anime, like people will have like thoughts. Like they'll be in a fight and they're like, "Oh man, I don't know if I can beat him." You can't do that in a live action. It's just not a thing. You're not gonna sit there and pause while that voice actor / the actor's voice thinks in their head, like, "Oh man, I don't know if I can beat this guy in a fight." They would just like skip right past that, which I think is kind of like you lose a lot of the. It's the same with books. You lose a lot of the perspective of like the inner monologue, which is really difficult because you can't. There's no translation medium. You can't like do a live action one of that. It's just not a thing.
Yeah, and yes, if you did, it'd be super experimental and probably still, it'd
be super weird. Yeah, there's no way. It can't be clean. It can't be that clean.
And that's the challenge. I kind of like, even Percy Jackson, right? Because part of the appeal of the Percy Jackson books is that Percy as a narrator is just kind of electric and very infectiously amusing. Like he is just very, very creative and very witty, and also kind of relatable. But you lose. It's going to be really tough, I think, for the kid who's playing him this go round to pull it off, because he's a very specific type of person. And the other guy who played him in the film just did not really capture those elements of Percy, which was a bummer. But but the bad translations seem to bad adaptations.
Yeah, bad transcribing almost in a different way. Yeah, I wouldn't even call it a translation. I call it like a transcribing.
Yeah, and it can be like a failure of, talent, like you're not skilled enough to do this, or it can be a failure of understanding, because it might be that you can shoot a good movie, but you just don't get what you're, translating. Which, I always think it's interesting too with Game of Thrones, right? Because when they were adapting, it was phenomenal, and when they started going off on their own, it was terrible because D&D is those two guys, like they're were so spot on when they had something to work off of.
I call it the Peter Jackson approach, because he's one of the only people who's like successfully done it across multiple movies. I guess it could be a show, I guess, or something. But
what else has he like fully adapted besides? I actually am not overly familiar with the wider range of Peter Jackson films. I just know Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter. Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. The Hobbit, not Harry Potter. Good Lord.
He did King Kong.
Okay.
And The Lovely Bones, that horror movie. Did you ever see that movie?
Never seen that one.
That's pretty good.
No, I haven't.
He did Mortal Engines.
Mortal Engines was okay. I haven't read the book, so I don't know how good of a
District 9.
Heard that's a good movie. Haven't seen or read it, though.
I feel like I've seen it. It's pretty good. A lot of random ones, but he doesn't do that many. Maybe that's why he's so good about it. Maybe he really chooses them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. And like Lord of the Rings is, while it's the movie's obviously fantastic, right? And I think it's the best you could feasibly do in a film. Like, I don't think it's possible to get better.
No. And I think he proved that with The Hobbits, because everyone's like, oh, it'd be better with CGI. It was exactly the same quality, to me, at least.
I actually thought that the CGI made it look less realistic.
Well, I mean, like, as far as, like, the dragon stuff. Like, that's what I mean. Like, the scope of things you could do, like a dragon burning down a town.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah, because that would be a lot more challenging, I think, with the 2001 tech to make it look good. And Smog, to be fair, did look quite good. It's just, like, it looked less gritty, which I think worked, because I have a whole meta-interpretation of The Hobbit to try and make it, somewhat good. But I really enjoyed both of those. But yeah, you're right. He needed probably better tech, ironically, to do The Hobbit.
I just think it'd be interesting if he did The Hobbit first, and then he did like the Lord of the Rings. Because like, could you imagine how good the Ghost Army would look, or how good Mordor would look, or the Black Gate would look, or all those scenes where it's like the massive zoom outs of the battles with just like a little bit better of tech. Like, that's one of those movies, if they sat him down again, we're like, hey, we don't want you to redo it, we just want you to remaster it. Wow, yeah. Chef's kiss.
So, I'd be interested to see that, because, like, one of the things I noticed is, like, at the beginning of Two Towers, where it kind of flashes back to Gandalf falling and fighting with the Balrog, that scene where they're falling, like, together, looks better than like the Balrog himself, frankly, looks better than any monster that I've seen in any recent movie.
Yeah, it does look really good. For some random reason, it looks really, really good.
Like the Balrog, but then also like the Nazgul's fell beasts, the Oliphants. Like, I don't know how they did it.
The elephants look really good, and I don't know why.
Yeah. Just everything about those movies cinematically just looks great. And I don't know how he managed it on the budget with the tech that was available. I mean, it's really incredible, astonishing.
And I'm also pretty sure that everything they filmed was in New Zealand. I don't think they left New Zealand, which is also crazy to think about.
Yeah, no, and they did they did pretty much all of it. There, which is.
I was watching I saw a video the other day, and it was them filming the Ride of the Rohirrim in the third movie.
Yeah.
And they had to literally go to a New Zealand military training area where they shoot like tank shells and artillery shells into and stuff like that, because there was nowhere else in New Zealand that had no like green.
Yeah.
So like they killed all the green by like training on it and blowing stuff up. So they had to go and like fill craters for like 2 miles and level it out
Huh.
so so
Huh.
the horses could ride steady. It was pretty crazy actually.
That's that's
Well,
nuts.
because there was nowhere else in New Zealand that didn't have grass, and they
Yeah.
were kind of going for like the kind of like dry, patchy, desert esque, on the verge of a terrible place of Mordor where there's not a lot of life, but there's enough life. But it was like
Yeah.
that. They had to go to like a military training area because there was nowhere else that wasn't like hilly, covered in rock, or just like green. So that was pretty interesting. I
That's
thought that was pretty cool.
super ingenuitive.
Yeah.
Um, very cool. Yeah, I didn't know. There's so many like small tidbits of lore about those movies. Which is
You could make a trilogy about them making the trilogy. To be honest with you.
yeah, you really could. You really could. And it would have been interesting though to see The Hobbit come first because the way they did it, and it kind of makes sense a little bit because with The Lord of the Rings coming out first, The Hobbit, then the movies are actually like a prequel, which the books of The Hobbit came out first, right? It's not a prequel; it was the first
Yeah, he
thing.
made him chronologically.
Yeah, but the movies, they actually turn them into more of a prequel, in the proper sense. Like Gandalf traveling to like Dol Guldur and fighting the necromancer, who it's referenced in The Hobbit, that he's gone off to defeat this necromancer, which is never really delved into any deeper than just that there is a
Yeah.
necromancer here. But
That's how I feel about
revealed,
that's how I feel about Moria. They reference Moria like 3 times, and all they ever referenced was like it was either a place that was okay, and then B it was a place that got destroyed, and then the last time it's referenced is when Bal Balden
Balin.
When Balin goes and tries to resurrect the city and it gets killed again.
Yep.
So like it's weird that he threw all these tidbits in just for it to like just be a reference point. It's kind of wild to me.
Yeah, and then he kind of, but Jackson with the movies, he kind of made it like, like Gandalf finds out that this necromancer is Sauron, which is from the Lord of the Rings. That the necromancer of Dol Guldur was sort of Sauron's, cover, for when he was recovering. But it was just interesting, and Gandalf is kind of hunting things down, and he finds the empty graves where the Nazgul should have been buried, and that kind of stuff I think was a good addition.
Because like, what's the alternative? The Nazgul just show up out of nowhere, and we're just like, oh, these are the bad guys.
Well, I mean, they never, it's never explained where they were. In a sense, it is because they're not really bodily, right? They kind of exist in the spirit world halfway anyway, so they're kind of.
Wait, so in the books, it's never referenced. They were like buried where the light would never touch their souls again, or whatever it was called, whatever they say.
Yeah. There was at least not that I recall, nothing like that they were kind of buried away, because I mean the kings didn't die; they sort of faded into these wraiths. Their bodies actually never, as far as I know, they never like decomposed and were never buried. They just sort of were turned into shades. Just kind of interesting, but the Nazgul are great.
I actually didn't know that. I really gotta read these books.
They're quite good. I need to reread them. It's been a couple years.
I'm pretty sure I literally have
reading.
The Hobbit sitting on my shelf right next to me. I just haven't picked up for some reason.
Hobbit is great. It's very much a different style than the Lord of the Rings. Hobbit's like a quick read though, and just solid storytelling.
But
yeah, just everything about it. Very well. And Bilbo is another really likable character. He becomes likable as the the book goes on. He initially starts out, and you're kind of like, this guy's a little bit of a putz, but
a putz in what way? Like he's just like kind of indifferent to everything, so he doesn't care.
No, he's like a little bit like I don't know, frou-frou. Like he tries to go back and make them turn back at the start of the adventure because he forgot his handkerchief.
Oh, that's the movie. Yeah.
Yeah, that's in the movie. Yeah, so he's got this sort of prim and properness that sort of goes away as the story goes on. And he eventually, more than this is one thing that the Hobbit did miss a little bit, is that like Bilbo kind of ends up being the big man on campus with the group in the book. Like he ends up kind of almost calling the shots for a lot of it because he sort of moves from being totally incompetent to actually being one of the most talented strategists and adventurers of them. And that's done a little bit in the movie, but with them kind of blowing up the importance of Thorin in the movie, which is fine. You got to do that if you're doing 3 movies, but it took a little bit away from, Bilbo kind of becoming a leader in his own right in the book.
Wait, like what's an example though? Like
he's the
like he just like dupes Thorin, or Thorin just goes along with it.
Thorin just goes, like, they all start to trust him to make good calls, and they kind of grumble about it, but you get the sense in the book that they all kind of learn, oh, he's to be trusted here, with this stuff. And trying just with the approach of the mountains, when they're going there and when they're sneaking out of the elven castle, like Bilbo's sort of the one that's calling the shots with all of it. And actually, like, it's not like he's saying what they should do and then Thorin orders everybody. It's like, like in the movie, it's like Thorin trusts Bilbo and everyone else is just following Thorin's orders. In the books, it's actually just everyone seems to grasp that Bilbo is able to, should be trusted to make these decisions, and he's kind of given a little bit more of a place of privilege, I guess, in the company than
he's like a trusted advisor almost.
Exactly.
Wait, so does the book? So like, is that why you I guess like in the movie you kind of see it in the third one when he's like talking about like how Thorin's kind of losing his mindset. Everyone starts to like not listen to Thorin and listen to him. Is that more of like a better transition? Is that what it is?
So
is that what you mean?
Interest a little bit. I mean, but they don't really, because trying to think. I mean, it's hard to describe exactly without having you haven't read the book to point to kind of specific attitudes, but it's just Bilbo becomes more of a hero, I think, and more of a leader, and is more kind of pure of heart in the books than he's done in the movie. And he's done pretty well in the movie. Martin Freeman plays him very, very well in terms of like his mannerisms and generally his attitude.
Yeah.
It's just the way the rest of the world reacts to Bilbo is a little bit off in the movie.
That's another thing that like always makes or breaks an adaptation is like if your star actor can't nail a character, the whole like you need to have one to two, in my opinion, saving grace characters. Like for me personally, the Pirates of the Caribbean movies are nothing without Johnny Depp. If it was replaced with somebody, if it wasn't Johnny Depp, I don't think they'd be successful at all.
It would just be successful for a different reason if someone else played an equally interesting character. But we wouldn't have Jack Sparrow. Right. You're right.
But I feel the same way with like The Witcher. Like The Witcher is really only good because Henry Cavill cares so much. Cared past tense, unfortunately. Cared so much. But I haven't seen the One Piece adaptation, but I'm sure that actor probably
the kid who plays who plays Luffy, is I've watched some clips of the anime since, spot on, like, and I've seen the kid like act and stuff before. He doesn't seem to be like the most talented actor, but he just seems to be like Luffy, like in his normal life. Like he just seems to kind of have that same attitude of like kind of the excitable, the excitable optimism and this kind of real, I don't know, bubbly personality.
Yeah, like bubbly, carefree.
Yeah, carefree, and
that's like the biggest thing that people say about like if like people don't like One Piece, it's because like I've had 2 people tell me when we were talking about that they don't like Luffy because it feels like his character never has any direction. He's just kind of like waltzing his way through everything.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, let's go to this island, and everyone's like, we can't get there. He's like, we'll get there, and they're like, how? And he goes, I don't know, but we'll get there. And like, and then he does, right? Then he does. So like, that's like the best part about it. But it is kind of like it's like a whimsical blundering through, and you're like, oh, there's no way he gets this done, and then somehow like it just drops in his lap. He's like, see, I told you guys, and they're like, come on now, this just isn't right. And you're like, well, it's like it's hard. It's hard. It's one of those characters. It's hard to call on his bullshit because every time you're like, there's no way this guy's gonna do it. It happens, and he's like, see, I told you guys, and the whole crew's like, God damn it, like here we go again, another one to chalk up the books of fuck. He made it. God, he got us there. We can't say anything now. You can't like call his bluff. That's like the best part. Is like he's unbluffable because he just believes that he can do anything.
It's very, very similar in the show. So they're in the live action.
Well, that's good as long as he's got that. That's like 90% of Luffy's character. So
yeah, he's spot on. Very, very, very much that attitude. He's kind of a joy to watch, and he's just it's nice to have a protagonist who's like not angsty, for once.
And that's what I tell. That's the thing I tell people is like it's like listen, it seems like for whatever reason more and more you're either super bubbly or you're just an edgelord, and it's just it's after a while it gets hard to watch. Like I get there's a lot of dark anime and a lot of dark shows, but like after a while you get tired of like the cynical skeptic, not people-esque like main character trying to like help, like, and they always make it like something weird, like he's like, oh, he's trying to help people, but he's like the worst people person. You're like, this is not, I don't want to watch this for the next, I don't want to watch this and then watch that and then watch the next one. Like the optimism's nice, which is why I think Demon Slayer is such a big hit too. Yeah,
I still haven't finished Demon Slayer. So
I haven't even watched the third arc. Whatever's after the Entertainment District, I haven't watched it yet. I don't know what it is. I think it's the Sword Village. Is they're going to the next one? I think it's the Sword. I think it's the Sword Village. I haven't watched it. It's on Hulu, I think. I should watch it. It's my next one.
It's on the list. Yeah.
Yeah, but there's a lot of list.
I meant not even just in terms of anime, right? Because you have like, every, I don't know. I watched The Wheel of Time. Speaking of bad adaptations, I watched The Wheel of Time.
Yeah, how was that? I heard mixed reviews.
Mid.
I heard mixed reviews.
Pretty mid.
Yeah.
It does miss certain, key points with the book that kind of screw up the world a little bit. They kind of do it in the name of like, modern politics, which like there wasn't really any, like if you thought about it for 2 seconds, the things they changed weren't actually like problematic. Like
problematic in what regard?
But just like gender relations and, men and women like having kind of these different roles, right? And they kind of missed what the author was doing subtly and just did it worse.
Dig deeper into that because I have no idea what the Wheel of Time is. I'm gonna be honest with you. I heard the show was cool from some people, but like I never really read the book or anything like that. I didn't really see any interest. Didn't really strike me.
It's a really cool world 'tis the idea. It's fantasy based more on Eastern mythos versus like a Western. Like Lord of the Rings is like kind of the Western one. Wheel of Time is very Eastern, and it's kind of epistemology, like the way the cosmos and the world works. Because like there's kind of a yin and yang side of magic that is sort of the core, and the two sides are basically there's male and female. And so if you are a male person, you tap into this side of the magic, and if you're female, you tap into this side of the magic. And what happened as a precursor to the novel is that 3,000 years before, the Dark One, who's the Sauron, Voldemort, whatever equivalent for this, the evil person, corrupted the male side of magic. He basically kind of broke in and spread darkness through it. So in the present day, it's really intriguing because women can use magic perfectly fine. Men who, kind of unlock or wake up to the ability are slowly driven insane by their contact with the corrupted side. So men can use magic, but it'll eventually turn them into basically, killer, insane murderers, and will eventually drive them over the edge. And it's kind of cool because the female mages are centered in this particular order, and the Ashadai, the Ashadai, I forget how to pronounce it exactly, but the way their order works is that you ever read Aragon?
Yeah, the Dragon books.
Yeah.
So those were really good actually. I'd love to see an adaptation of that done correctly.
The 2006 movie was not great.
Oh, there is a movie. Oh, okay.
Yeah, it wasn't very good.
Oof. Not surprised.
Yeah, but what's cool is that in that the dragons and the riders have this connection, right? So the Ashadai, the women sorceresses, have what are called warders or wardens, which are male weapons experts who they have a similar thing. It's generally a mental connection. Sometimes platonic, sometimes not. It depends on the specific pair. But the two main ones are entirely platonic, but they're closer than brother and sister, and they have this real link. And it's generally when the sorceress dies, it's kind of similar. It's similar to how the dragons and the dragon riders work. If the dragon dies, the rider lives on. If the rider dies, the dragon dies. It's a similar thing. If the warder dies, the sorceress lives on. If the sorceress dies, warden usually is going to die either by suicide or, for a failure, or something else.
A failure to protect their whatever. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But they're super badass. The warders, but there's elements of the way, just with having a magic system that's based on male and female, which is pretty unique, and very well done in the books. It is not very they try to convolute the message, and they also sort of undercut the message of the books, which is generally, egalitarian, and, everybody is, has their part to play, whoever you are. And they kind of, I don't know, they twist it up and just sort of make it not as interesting, and also miss the point with some things. And so just really stretch it. Kind of like The Witcher.
Yeah, it hits that critical mass, essentially, where it just goes over the edge and you're no longer connected to it.
Yeah. And it's, just kind of lost you. There's also the problem with modern fantasy shows and this desire to make every single small village look like, downtown San Francisco. Like, there's, like Lord of the Rings, you can tell just by looking at some people what part of the world you're in. Like, even like the Rohirrim and the Gondorians, like, they're both like white people, but they're done that you can tell which group you're looking at because of how distinctly the character designs are done.
Yeah.
And
I mean, like even in the new show, like the Rings of Power show, the diversity is fine. But you can just tell like where people are like status wise really well. So like
with status wise, yeah, but like there's
you definitely can't tell they're like new Minorians, quote quote.
Yeah. And like there's this one of the things I think with fantasy is like if you're in a small village, right? Like there shouldn't be any diversity.
Not
like
really. No.
Really. I mean, even in modern day, if you go to a small village in England or a small town here, like there's not diversity.
No, there's like five. There's like 5 to 10 families here, and then everyone else kind of stems off that.
Yeah, precisely. And it's obviously it's not, I don't know, game breaking, for an adaptation. If they want to do that, whatever. But I'm like, if you're gonna be interested in representing people and you want to create a fantasy world, why don't you make a people that are a particular race and are cool instead of just sort of taking everybody and mushing them into this pot where nobody is actually anything. Like there's this bit in Wheel of Time, the show, where there's a group of people, and in the books they're very, very like Japanese coded, like Chinese Japanese coded, and in the show, the most like horribly off-putting thing is like you enter into this town, or this city, and it's stylized very strongly after Japan, and that the one of the main characters, who himself is an Asian actor, is from this town or from the city. This is his people. You get in there, and then you go up, and they meet the ruler of the town, and he's an Asian dude, but right next to him is like a fat white redheaded guy, and on the other side is a black dude. Is like his 2 advisors that are also done up in the same outfit he's in, and like then it's just kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, you're like, dude, this is a town of 100 people. There's no way everyone here is like some sort of Chinese or Asian-esque relation race, like in the book. And there's just a white guy with red hair, a black guy, and then like, a Hispanic dude. Like it's just not like there's no shot. Like that's not how is not how it works.
And it's immersion breaking, and like the problem with fantasy, like with fantasy adaptations or just fantasy media in general, it's very easy to become ridiculous, like to either become corny and cheesy or become like melodramatic and kind of over the top and become too much in that way, which the Lord of the Rings was really good at keeping it like you could suspend every bit of your disbelief and buy in so much. Just there becomes with a lot of these shows like accumulations of things like that, where eventually you're just like, I don't buy this world anymore. Now it kind of looks cheesy, and I can't get invested in what's happening because I don't feel a connection. I don't. It's lost to me, essentially.
Well, it's the same thing like with like when those elephant riders show up in Lord of the Rings. Even if they are, I don't think they're all the same race, but like they're all painted the same way. They're all dressed the same way. You can tell that it's not a racial thing. It's a upbringing sort of thing. And like the people from the East, all those guys on the pirate boats, they all look the same on the pirate boat.
Yeah,
it's
precisely.
It's not because Tolkien wanted them all to be whatever, like Arabic or Middle Eastern or anything like that. It's just they all were from the East, and all of the Eastern people, as they casted them, had to look like they were from the same place.
Exactly. You
didn't see like 8 Chinese guys, 5 guys that looked like they were from Africa, and 3 people that looked like they were out of fucking Scotland.
And like to a certain extent, like I'm okay if you want to do a race swap for whatever reason. Like I'm okay with that. But the thing is, like one of the things with Rings of Power, like the main guy who played the elf, he's a black guy.
Yeah.
And what I would have actually preferred them do is, instead of there just being a black elf, is just decide in our version the elves are black.
Yeah.
And like just do it. And I'm like,
or it's not uncommon for some to be black and some to be like light skinned or some to be regular white people, you know, whatever. But you can't just throw in one black guy and be like,
yeah,
oh,
and
look,
that's a problem. And the
normal,
thing is, I
like
think
everyone else. No, dude.
And the whole
he's
the
only black guy in this whole show that's an elf.
And the whole bit is it's about like respect for the lore too, because like in the lore, like all the elves are the same race. Like they were all actually created at the same time in the same place by the same person. Like they're all explicit. And I mean, frankly, in the book they're all explicitly white. You can change that up if you want, but I just like make them all the same. That's what I want. And don't give me like, I also think just the elves were generally done really poorly in that show, because like there's a bunch of ugly elves, which is
they're
like if you
look like they're all from like north of Norway,
and they all
fair
look
skinned, like light hair and bright eyes. That's all they're supposed to look like.
And beautiful. They're supposed to be
gorgeous.
very, very like angelic. And like Peter Jackson's movies, like every single elf looks kind of otherworldly.
And they glow a little bit,
yeah. And in the like the King of the Elves in the Rings of Power just like looks like a CPA. Like like this guy looks like he's on Prozac. Which is just,
I just don't understand it, to be honest with you. It just doesn't make much sense.
Yeah, just a poor casting, and it just was not
like if you want to do that route, make every city be like just make it a hub of random hodgepodge of people, and then you can throw whoever you want in it. Don't be like, this is the oldest elven city in the world, and you're like, oh cool, why are there like 9 elves here?
Yeah.
And the rest are just like random people that don't look like elves, and you're like, oh well, they're all elves. You're like, you can say they're elves, but I look across this city, this ancient elvish city you've showed me, and I see about 10 elves, dude. So
yeah, it's like the Dothraki, right? In the Game of Thrones, right? Because like they just were limited in their because like the Dothraki are supposed to be like Arabic,
right?
Or Iranian, but like probably at minimum 50%, probably more of the Dothraki are played by Scottish guys.
Yeah.
But you don't notice it because they all look like they all do the hair, they do the beard, they do the clothes, and they're usually like dirtied up and
tan,
all the extras.
Sort of tan.
Some of them are tan.
They're not naturally tan. They at least have like some sort of like bronzer on them.
Yeah, and they all like
they look like they ride horses shirtless around the world.
Exactly. And like you don't notice, even though this is kind of what they're coded as and what most of the main ones are, the main characters are Arabic. They blend in such a way because the attention is not brought to it. It's kept in the back. Like you don't notice when there's like a bunch of white Dothraki because like no attention's brought to it. And it's kept, in the background.
Because the main characters look like how they should look, and the spares look good enough to pass in like a glance. As the characters are walking past them, they're not like...
Exactly. Yeah, just a passable resemblance.
In the Rings of Power, it's like main character, black guy playing an elf, and you're like, this just isn't correct. Because you've never, ever seen a black elf in all of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, and it kind of brings into question, what happened to them.
If anything, yeah.
Like in between, but it's and like I said, like I have no issue with if they want to say like our rendition, the elves are going to be black. I'm fine with that. He looks the most like an elf out of any of the elf actors. But if you're going to do it, full send it and don't kind of go halvesy. And like, if you're going to mess up the lore, do it in a way that at least keeps your show consistent in some way. Like, if you're going to be inconsistent with Tolkien's lore, be at least consistent with your own.
I think that's another big issue I have with the adaptations. For some reason, adaptations believe they're not going to be held to the standard of, like, previous work. It's like, oh, here's a new adaptation of, here's a new story about this. It's like Lord of the Rings. Like, oh, yeah. So we're just going to throw away all of the other Lord of the Rings. And we're gonna start fresh. And you're like, you don't get to start fresh. It's not how that works.
It's also this. I think a lot of these people have a real misunderstanding of like what the purpose of art and entertainment is. Like, both these works as being entertaining and as being art, because you see this time and again with these new shows that just flop. Is like people blame the audience for their show flopping constantly, and I'm like, you know what makes shows flop? Bad shows. Like, if you make a good show, especially with the exposure that Rings of Power had like a 30%, I forget the term for it, but people who watch the first episode and also watched all the other episodes.
Returning viewers.
Retention rate.
Retention.
30%.
That's a lot.
Huge drop off. Yeah. Like, crazy drop off.
That's a lot. That means like two out of the 3 people just didn't finish it when they started it. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't that great. Let's be real.
And it wasn't. And the problem is, though, like, everyone gave it a shot because they were like, "Oh, it's Tolkien. We'll see if they, by some miracle, don't fuck it up." Yeah. And They did,
by
and
the first
everyone
episode,
saw it.
Everyone's like, "This is bunk. Fuck them." We're done here.
Exactly.
There's nothing we can do to finish salvage this one. It's over.
That's exactly right. And the same thing's going to be true with this Percy Jackson. If it's bad, everyone's going to try it, and if it's bad, it won't stick. And if it's good, people will finish it.
It's almost so bad that, dude, everyone needs to start taking these adaptations of things and just starting. If you want to start fresh, dude, then just adapt it not into the main storyline. I would rather watch 7 seasons of like a spin-off in the same universe than try to watch you spin some bullshittery into the main storyline.
Yeah.
By example, but the Book of Boba, The Mandalorian, Ahsoka, any of that, dude. I don't like, I'd rather sit and watch 7 seasons of you try to make new episodes than try to like spin how Boba is going to be part of Luke's story. That's been the problem. Yeah, that's been the problem with Star Wars is there's this like Skywalker syndrome. Like, they won't move away from it, and like obviously, there's not a real reason why they won't. They just choose not to.
Yeah, it's like, I like Luke Skywalker as much as the next guy, but I mean, the man shouldn't. I mean, if you were going to bring him back, you should have done him more justice with the sequel trilogy, or just like, I don't know. He did not. He was not like his story was done like with the original trilogy. He doesn't need to kind of.
If you're going to continue it and like find a new adaptation, bring a whole new character in. Yeah. I'd rather sit down and accept a plot or like a couple of like I would have some presumptions about it, like, okay, here's this new guy. He's never been introduced before, but he's just as powerful as Luke. He was across the galaxy. He was here during this event in XYZ, and this is what he's been doing since. Here's where the story starts.
Yeah.
Because there's no reason that you can't accept
Or he's somebody who's weak.
Yeah, or
and
he's
is going to wind up as powerful as Luke.
Right.
There's
just so many
somebody
good
new.
arcs. There's so many good tropes to work your way through. The foe to friend. The quarrelers to lovers. Whatever it is, like there's so many good tropes.
Star Wars is super tropey.
It's
in
super
a good
tropey
way
already. It's always been tropey.
Like, yeah, and in a good way, because it does the tropes perfectly in a unique setting.
The whole basis of the whole thing is literally light, dark, good, evil. If that ain't the biggest trope in the world, I don't know what is.
Yeah, exactly right. And I mean, it's so, it basically takes the style of Westerns and moving further back, samurai movies, and just puts them in space.
It is literally, they are literally space cowboys. It is the space Wild West.
Yeah, and I mean, if you watch like A New Hope is basically the Hidden Fortress, which is a movie by Kurosawa. I mean, it is basically like man's daughter, nobleman's daughter is abducted by a bunch of bandits at this hidden massive fortress. And there's this local farmer boy who meets this old samurai and needs to kind of learn to take on the people at this fortress, and that's their journeys to travel there. And there's even like these two kind of stupid common folk people that are interpreted into the droids,
like that are kind of like
like these two comedic relief peasants that are turned into the droids and
then it even gets worse because they literally give you a space cowboy. They give you Han Solo, who is by definition like the biggest space cowboy in the whole series.
For sure.
And it's literally guy meets girl, guy helps girl just because he's bored and is in love with her. That's the only that's all it is for Han Solo. Han Solo literally just stumbles into it, and he's like, the girl's cute, I'll stick around. And that's his whole trope. That's his whole trope.
And that's what's really great about, I think, some of these spin-off shows is some of them really get, like Mando, the first 2 seasons, and Boba to a bit of a lesser extent, but Boba as well. They understand like how good Western looks on Star Wars, and they employ it, very, very well. I mean, the masked, the masked gunslinger is essentially, I mean, it's basically the Lone Ranger, kind of a variant of the Lone Ranger, which, is a classic, definitely a classic.
And that's literally just Hans and Chewie.
Yeah, I mean, they're basically,
bumbling around doing whatever the hell comes across their desk.
I mean, if we're probably being kind of, not politically correct, Chewbacca is probably the Native American sidekick.
Yeah, no, 100%. That's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah, but they reinterpret that and they put it into a different context, and then it's excellent. And like the imagery of Darth Vader is right out of those both those Japanese films, but also the Western with like the man in the dark, the dark hat, the dark hatted gunslinger. Yeah, and it's because like in all these old movies, there's always one of the guys who wears all black and he's a bad guy, and he's like this intense kind of villain. And then in the same thing with the samurai movies, there's often this a black samurai, or a black suited samurai who has like the mask covering his face and is kind of the big bad.
They even do that in what Ninja Turtles. Shredder's always like got his face covered. He's got the edgy name, and like he's always in the shadows. He wears like black. It's so tropey.
It is, but like both of those things, I think do it pretty well. Like Shredder and Darth Vader, I think both. I think Vader's a much better villain, but I like Shredder a great deal. Actually, he's always been pretty good. And Ninja Turtles, actually, you ever like watched or read Ninja Turtles? Like really, like watch or like any of the shows?
The live action movies, to be honest. The one that have like, because one of them didn't. They used to have that redheaded girl, and then they swapped her out for like Megan Fox. And then there was a ton of cartoons, like tons of versions of cartoons.
It's really whack because like the top 20 franchises of all time, like in terms of net profits, TMNT is the only one that was like an indie production. Like it was started separate from any it wasn't Marvel, it wasn't DC, it wasn't Paramount, it wasn't any of these
random like idea.
Yeah, like it wasn't Disney. It was just two guys who literally were like screwing around with concepts and like, this could be cool. and then they made it, and then it's like for some reason it's just all over, and it's great.
I mean, isn't that how like Transformers was? Wasn't Transformers like a non?
Transformers was Hasbro.
Yeah, but that's a toy company.
Toy company. Yeah, it's true.
Not like a movie production company.
That's true, but still technically not independent.
Fair.
In the same way. Yeah, not at least at its start. But yeah, I mean it was same. G.I. Joe and Transformers were kind of, and I think TMNT has made more than Transformers.
I'll buy that every day.
Yeah. But it's TMNT is
but like that actually I never thought those adaptations were terrible either, because like I guess not adaptations but like recreations of them were never terrible, because they stayed in the same thing. It was always a goofy movie about karate martial art turtles. The whole concept is just ridiculous itself. So they really
I thought Michael Bay's renditions were great, actually. Like they're corny and like they're but that's what I mean. Like
they're corny and goofy, but like they're good. It's just like he knew exactly what he was producing.
Yeah, and it's like if I always enjoy the Transformers movies,
if you walk in there not expecting explosions and giant robot fights, what are you really there for?
Yeah, and I mean I'm like, you know what those movies are great at? Showing big ass robots killing each other.
It's the same reason when I watch Godzilla versus King Kong, I'm not like, oh my god, dude, where's the plot?
Yeah, exactly. You're like, I want to see
giant overarching storyline I've been missing this whole time.
You're like, I just want to see the monkey fight the lizard,
and tear down half of Tokyo while they do it.
Exactly right. And you want to see. I
don't care about The Rock's love interest or whatever it is.
Yeah, those those types of movies tend to do what they are doing well.
And even like cult classics nailed it. There's like Jurassic Park, a cult classic that nailed it head on. What did people want to see? Yeah, was there a little bit of love and romance? Sure. A little bit of jokes and characters? Sure. But the majority of the movie is A, working with dinosaurs, or B, running from dinosaurs. That's it.
Yep.
That's it. That's all it ever was. That's all it'll ever be. No one's trying to redo it.
It's probably the best monster movie ever made. Jurassic Park.
And I wouldn't even really call it a monster movie, to be honest with you.
Well, and just in terms, because it's a little less scary because it's dinosaurs, obviously. But I mean, it's the whole bit is like they're getting hunted by the monsters.
True. That's true.
And then that's and like everything, like those special effects are like better than most, like the 2015 movies. Yeah. Like the dinosaurs look better in the 90s than in like the Jurassic World movies.
I'm pretty sure it's. I'm gonna look it up right now, but I'm pretty sure it's an 80s movie.
It might be. I thought it was like 91 or 92. I'm calling 92. 93.
Good call. 93. God,
yeah.
Jeff Goldblum looks so young in this movie. Christ.
we worried so much about if we could do it. You never stopped to think if we could.
But yeah. I don't know, like another one, like Ghostbusters. Like, that movie's been redone like 3 times, and the original's still the best because it's just a wacky cast pretty much running through the city of New York, cleaning up ghosts, quote, with like shitty special effects, but it's still like wacky and goofy, and like, no one's ever like, oh man, dude, I wish the plot was deeper. I wish the characters were connected with me more and more, like...
Yeah, and comedies, it's a little bit different too, right? With like a good comedy or a good like adventure movie, like if it's doing what it's doing, like I mean, frankly, like Indiana Jones, like the first 2, there's nothing that deep going on. I mean, there's hints at it, and that kind of comes to fruition in the 3rd one, and you really see like, oh, these movies can be very deep and kind of make you. But like the first one is just like like a pulp fiction novel from like the 40s, like a serial adventure from the 40s, and like
it's just like a very long adventure. He's just running around.
Yeah, and it's great. Like going, playing, hopping all over the world, and then the second one, also very good. And then the 3rd one, you kind of get the father-son dynamic.
Yeah, finally like a start of an overarching plot.
Yeah, which is great. And I mean, I rewatched all three Indiana Jones movies like over the course of 2 days earlier, maybe a month or two ago, and they are damn good. Like, they are not trying to be, anything other than just the best darn adventure movies ever. Yeah. And they do it.
We watched Back to the Future the other day, dude, and I forgot how much of that movie is like not about getting back to the future at all.
Yeah.
I forgot. Like, it's like if you took the time to watch that movie and you go from like, if you just like took clips of it of like how much they actually discuss getting back or like getting Marty back, it's literally like 20 minutes tops.
Yeah.
And the rest of the movie is him just like bumbling around his parents' life, like trying to like avoid his mom and get his dad to be cooler. And that's like all the movie really is.
Yeah.
I forgot how much of the movie's like not even like science-y-esque. And like even when it is science-y, it's like hilariously science, right? Like we have
billion gigawatts.
We have to get 1.2 gigajoules of the energy from plutonium, and you're like, dude, this is ridiculous. Like, he's like, you know what can make that a bolt of lightning, but we'll never know where that is or when. And you're like, okay, you're like, all right.
You can't just buy plutonium, Doc. My favorite line.
Welcome. Where you came from, plutonium might be like as on this at every corner store, but not in 1955, Marty.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even the lines are just like ridiculous. And he's like, "Oh no, it's the Libyans that I was supposed to build a bomb for." We're like, what?
Apparently, that was a relatively topical reference back in the 80s. Because apparently they had done a bunch of like plane jackings and stuff, and so it was somewhat topical. But yeah, seeing it now, I remember watching it.
It doesn't make any sense. It's like why Libyans? Yeah, why the Libyans?
Yeah, I'm like, that's the most random country in the world.
I thought so. I didn't know that it was topical. I just assumed it was Libyans because they just decided to pick some random country, like some random troublesome country that like needed a bomb built by a crazy scientist. Is what I kind of gathered.
It's how like in like the 2000s, like every movie bad guy terrorists were like the Iranians or like the Afghans. The Afghans. But it's so it was kind of similar. Yeah. But
that movie, man, like that, like it's one of those things that just reminds me of like they kept it so in the scope of like him being in the past, you almost forget that he's in the past and trying to get back to the future, which is so funny.
Yep. Yeah, and I've only seen that movie once. I think it was a little while ago, but I recall it.
You gotta watch it again, man. It's comical. It's so funny.
Yeah. There's some fire. The actor who plays Doc Brown, especially,
he's really good.
It's really great. He was in, I think, the live action Clue. He's been in a couple other things too.
I actually liked Clue for being based on a game. But again, to be fair, that was very open interpretation. I mean, like the only box they put themselves in was there had to be the characters and someone had to get murdered. Everything else they could have just done away with.
Yeah, and it's pretty funny. Like it's and they have what's his name? I forget the guy who plays the butler. He's
oh yeah, I know who you're talking about.
It'll come to me shortly. Well, he's hilarious. He's the guy who's in Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Tim Curry.
Oh, Tim Curry. Yeah, he's a gem.
God, Rocky Mountain Horror Show is also hilarious.
No, I actually haven't seen. I've listened to the music and the soundtrack quite a few times, but maybe I'll watch it because October. Once
the guy comes out in fishnets, man, I start losing it. It's so funny.
I'm just a sweet transvestite.
Yeah, dude. As soon as he takes like the steps out in the heels and the fishnets, I just lose it. It's so funny.
Yeah.
He does it well. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. At least he does it well.
Yeah, I've seen clips, and Tim Curry is just really, really funny. He's just got one of those I don't know. He reminds me of like almost like a precursor to Matt Berry.
Yeah, it is kind of like that vibe.
Just like the British guy who can just make himself make everything sound funny.
Yeah,
just with the delivery.
That's how I feel about Mike Myers when he does his British accents.
Like Mike Myers in general,
everything he does in like a British accent is just, it's so like, again, this goes into like the comedy thing we were talking about. Like it's different when it's comedy, but it's so over the top and corny and like outrageous that you have to laugh at it because he's like, "Oh yeah, baby," and you're like, no English person has ever spoken like that. Like, "Oh yeah," and you're like. He's like, "You get it, you little dirty girl." And you're like, no one ever talks like that. But he's just saying with such a straight face. Like, I would love to see bloopers of him trying to get through those lines. Because he wrote them all himself, too. It's like, it's not only like the line is funny, it's you trying to do the line that you know is already funny. Like, and expand upon that. And for that, dude, I bet he just loses it every once in a while. And he's like, I can't do this. He's like, I need a break. I need to go watch like a sad like puppy commercial or something to like not laugh at everything I'd say for the next 5 minutes.
Yeah,
because there's just so many good ones.
There was a meme that came out here. Let me see that because you've seen Austin Powers.
Yeah, I've seen him quite a bit. Yeah,
there's this hilarious thing I saw. I don't know if you've seen this, but it was like it's a section from the novelization of. I think it's The Spy Who Shagged Me.
That's probably one of my favorite ones.
I think this is the narration. I just figured I'd read this because this is making the rounds.
Oh God!
It's from the scene where he's driving the cart and gets stuck. Trying to back it up and turn around.
Yeah.
But let's see. I've gone the wrong shagging way, Austin thought to himself groovily. Austin stopped the cart and attempted to turn around. However, Dr. Evil's dastardly corridor walls were too close together to make a U-turn. Austin had to think fast. He turned a little one way, then reversed a little, then turned, then reversed. On and on for minutes until the cart he was driving was perfectly wedged perpendicularly between the unsexy walls. Yeah, baby, said nobody, since this was not good.
Yeah, baby.
It was you. I said, yeah, baby, said no one because this was
not good. The unsexy walls is hilarious, too.
Yeah.
He thought to himself groovily.
Yeah.
But those movies know what they are. Like, they know what they're supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
That is one of those things where, like, when you can see a movie that clearly, exactly as it's intended, the director or the producer or whoever's in charge of that should be proud of themselves.
Well, that's what kind of, that's come up a couple of times where people have been talking. I've seen this on like the online discourse, I guess, about movie reviews and like what qualifies as like how to appropriately review a movie.
Sure. Yeah.
And generally what I do is like, I think a movie is good. Well, I think a movie is well done.
Oh, we're going to get Ed's movie criteria 101 here.
Well, I think it's well done if you can tell what it set out, what it's trying to accomplish, and if it accomplished it, then it's a well done movie. Now, that doesn't mean necessarily like it's a good or an artistic movie per se.
Or you enjoyed it even.
But it
set the premise and then it followed through.
Yeah, because like you can look at a romantic comedy, and if it, whether you like it or not, you can look at it and be like, yeah, that's a well done romantic comedy, even if you don't like rom-coms, or at least you should be able to. I think be able to look at a rom-com and be like, not my cup of tea.
That criteria they did it well. Laid out. This criteria you just laid out is how I judge every Adam Sandler movie. I'm like, okay, what's the premise? Oh, okay, it's a guy who plays golf in a very unorthodox way. okay. And then the whole movie, he just proceeds to play golf in a super unorthodox way. And you're like, all right, he did it. Yep. It's like, okay, it's like, or you're like, oh, it's grown-ups. What is it? It's 4 friends who get together with their families, and that's it right there. That's the whole premise.
That's the whole movie.
Yeah, and then what happens?
Adam Sandler inevitably ends up with a woman who is way out of his league
every time.
Yep. Yeah.
Every time. And like, what's another Adam Sandler movie? Like the Longest Yard, the football movie. Have you ever seen that movie?
I haven't.
He's a football player. He's a famous pro football player, and he goes to jail. And they play football against the convicts play against the police officers or the corrections officers, I guess, for some reason. But that's the whole movie. The whole movie is he's a star football player. The whole goal is they're gonna play against the officers for, I can't remember what the fucking like the consequences or whatever, but that's the whole movie. He builds a team. They play the game of football. They end up winning in the end. Boom, movie done. And you're like, every Adam Sandler movie, for however terrible, cringy, the same 4 actors fucking rotating through it, whatever you want to call it. You know, if you want to see, you know, Kevin James 4 times and David Spade 3 times and fucking Chris Rock twice, you know, for whatever reason, he lays it out. He in the first 10, 15 minutes, you know exactly what's going to be and happen in this movie, and then the whole movie just proceeds to do that. And then it ends in some mediocre, trash kind of way, where you're like, well, he got the girl, which is what he wanted the whole time.
Yeah, I mean, you might not like it, but he has a very particular type of thing, and it's clearly appreciated by someone, because he wouldn't be able to keep making them if no one watched them.
And listen, I like Adam Sandler movies, but you know what they're going to be. You know exactly what they're going to be.
And see, I don't like him that much, but like, you know what you're going to get every time.
Every single time, without fault.
He's highly consistent. Highly consistent. Now, I don't like his style very much.
It's not anything other than like surface level comedy and like one-liners, but you know.
Yeah, but
it's what I would call I don't want to say, I would say how I feel when I watch his movies is like how I imagine, like it's exactly like this. I'll convey it like this. It makes me feel how when me and my friends hang out, that's how it makes me feel, which I think is what it's supposed to do, because it's always like, it's really on the nose comedy. It's topical. It's people watching based. It's like, or not people watch, like I guess like people watching esque. Like they'll be sitting there or standing there, and something funny will happen like 10 feet away, and they'll each get 2 jokes, and then it just and then it moves on. It's like I call it crowd work movie comedy is kind of how I think about it. Crowd work, because you see something and they play off of that, and then they move on and they go to the next thing they play off of.
You're right. Like, they do that a lot. Like, something will happen to one of the guys in Grown Ups that's pretty funny, like the dude getting shot with an arrow, and then it'll be like 3 of the guys, like, one makes a comment. That's very much.
Yeah, I call it crowd work comedy, because he's not the only one that does it. There's plenty of movies that do crowd work comedy. Mm-hmm. Like all the scary movies, all of like Eddie Murphy's movies do crowd work comedy, in my opinion. Like Men in Black, all of Men in Black's jokes are crowd work, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. There's nothing like inherently funny about what's going on, really. It's just like, Will Smith gets a joke in. He goes, hey, like when there's like the first Men in Black, when they sit down for the aptitude test. And there's the guy, and he's like, do you know why you're here? And like the fucking West Point cadet or graduate stands up, and he goes, we're here because you want the best of the best of the best, sir. And he like does a salute, and then Will Smith just hits him with the best of the best of the best, sir. Like that's all he says. He just repeats it back like a mocking way, and you're like, that's not even like inherently funny. That's just like. Yeah.
But I think also what you might be describing too is a little bit of like observational humor.
Yeah, that's what I call crowd work humor. Observational.
Can just take something that's like not inherently funny or just a little funny and then just blow it up.
Yeah, I call it crowd work because it's usually like that's it is observational, but they always like there's almost like a bait to it. And why I call it crowd work is because like in crowd work, like stand-up comedy, you know, the comic asks them a starting question. They're like, "Oh, is this your girlfriend?" And then they go, "Yeah, that's my girlfriend." They go, "Okay, observation right there."
Yeah.
But in the movie, you can't be like, "Hey, what's going on over there?" So they throw instead of a
an
question,
inciting event.
yeah, it's an inciting event instead of a question, because you can't. Adam Sandler can't be standing there all the time being like, "Well, whose car is that?" You know, or whatever, or like, "Man, what's this basketball doing here?" So like the basketball will just come like flying out of like his kid's room, and like, or like a baseball will come flying through the window, and he's like, "Oh, there's the quote unquote question," but it's an inciting event, and then he's like, "Oh man, you know, where does baseball like come like?" It's like that, so that's why I call it crowd work.
They'll just vamp on it.
They vamp on it for like 2 or 3 lines, and then they move to the next thing. That's why I call it kind of crowd work. But then there's actual movies where it's like things that are happening are inherently funny to me, at least to me. But that's just like I consider that a different level of comedy, and it's usually things that are inherently funny in the movies are because it's not a comedy movie, but it's comedic relief. I think a movie really declines if you have to use like crowd work or observational humor in a non-comedy movie to like get to get comedic relief. Unless it's the same character every time, then I'm okay with it.
That's the Marvel problem.
Yeah. Like, oh my god, it's so terrible.
The quippiness taking over.
Yeah.
Because like every single person's like trying to do the observational thing with the villain they're fighting.
Yep.
And like, you need to have a very like Spider-Man can pull that off. Not everyone else. So could Iron Man, because you know he's Tony Stark, right? Yep. Like Captain America doesn't quip.
No, but like they tried to make him do it.
Yeah, and like it.
They tried to make like Black Widow quippy. I'm like, Black Widow's not supposed to be a quippy person.
Yeah, she's like has had a horribly depressing life.
Yeah, there's nothing funny off the dome for her. She doesn't like find humor in things.
Yeah, like you can create a character, you know, that's like you know Peter Quill, you know, Star-Lord, and like he can, you know, be quippy, but you can't have somebody who's not like the thing that I hate is Captain Marvel being quippy, like because she's the least quippy character, but they make her quip.
Yep.
Like it's just because like if someone was like her, they wouldn't do that. I'm like,
yeah, it's kind of yeah. I get over it too because like there's something to be said about like the quippiness can apply to a few characters, but when you have like it's my big problem with all Marvel things. The cast is too big. You cannot have 11 people fighting and they all get their little one-liners in, you know, like sequentially, like ba-boom, 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 and you're like, okay, now can we fight? And they're like, oh yeah, 5 seconds of fighting, bam, 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 5 more quips from half the cast. You're like, bro, like, yeah, everyone's getting a one-liner, and these one-liners aren't even that good. They're just getting them in.
Yep.
And then what I really hate is like the second tier of that, when they start quipping at each other for no reason.
Yep.
Like Thor makes a joke and like Captain America says something. What? Captain America's not like that. He doesn't do that.
Language.
Yeah.
That's Cap. He's not a quipper.
No. Like I didn't think the language ones were that funny, which I was kind of upset they put those in there.
I actually no the at the beginning of Age of Ultron, the language where like basically the very first line of the film is Iron Man gets hit with something, he goes and Cap goes language like on the comms, and then no one brings it up. You know, they're all calling the shots for the battle, and then Iron Man like 30 seconds later, like, by the way, is no one going to bring up the Cap just said language? And like that's one of the things that I think it's well, because you have a quippy person bouncing off of someone who's not quippy.
Yeah, but then they made him try to be quippy too, and then it just got into like a back and forth, and like the lines got worse and worse over time, I'd say.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's become
all the Thanos
pulpy
ones. Yeah, by all the But all the Thanos ones, dude, it's just like they're just chopping it up
Yeah.
way too much. For being a superhero like action movie, they're chopping it up way too much.
Yeah. For sure. I think that they need to. I mean, there's a lot of things that Marvel needs to do.
And like, no offense to some of the Marvel cast, I think they're great actors. Some of those great actors are not inherently funny, and just cannot. They just cannot even like funny lines. They just can't deliver them as well as others.
Like Scarlett Johansson's not really funny.
She's not a funny person, but Paul Rudd is hilarious.
Yeah,
and he delivers those Ant-Man lines perfectly.
Yeah, and then you have like Robert Downey Jr. who can do both.
Yeah,
it's like both sides of it.
But
very talented.
He's been a comedic actor before, though.
Yeah, and then you have Hemsworth, who like his problem is kind of like he's not really serious.
Yeah,
like I think when he was like super serious Thor, it was kind of lame. Like he was a little stilted.
Oh, dude, I hated the first Thor movie for that reason. I thought they they tried to play him like a jovial, go lucky, winning, awesome Norse god. Like beer hall and mead and women and fighting, and it just turned out to be like he was kind of like sullen, but also like kind of jovial.
Yeah,
he was like a jovial warrior of Valhalla with like an existential crisis coming on. He was like,
Ragnarok kind of broke him open a little bit.
Yeah.
Ragnarok kind of broke him, and I thought that was good. And then Love and Thunder pushed it too far.
I didn't see Love and Thunder. I'm not gonna lie.
Ragnarok I think is good because it's a bit goofy, but then it kind of unlocks this badassery.
Yeah.
And then you see that develop through, I think, Infinity War and Endgame. Infinity War obviously is like top BA Thor.
Right.
For sure. And then just that scene where he shows up with Rocket and Groot, and then
that one goes hard.
In Wakanda, and then he just does the like jump, and just the storm clouds like gather over him. I'm like, that is the most epic thing, because I mean Thor's been one of my favorites for like even with his kind of stilted way. I liked him early on, and he. Just was that was epic. But then Endgame Thor was kind of I don't know, Fat Thor. Didn't quite do it for me.
I don't know what they're really doing there. I get he was like kind of depressed, but like that just kind of was weird for me. I didn't really get that one.
Yeah.
One that I've always liked that for some reason they have not made. I haven't seen the TV show, so I'm not going to speak on the TV show. But Loki has always been, in my opinion, one of the best written Marvel characters. He is consistent. His lines make sense. His intent makes sense. His trickery is always on point, etc.
I think yes, and I'll just qualify this with a little bit of what happened with Loki, because the show Loki.
Go ahead.
I won't spoil it. I'll just talk about the way they characterize him.
I'll probably never get to it, man. There's so many shows.
Okay. Because basically, Loki has a phenomenal arc, because like he was the big bad of the first Avengers movie, and both of the first two Thor. Like he was a villain.
He wanted like the Tesseract or whatever it was.
Yeah, and then he was working for Thanos early on, and then he had a whole turnaround over. I mean, very gradual change into like, oh, he's actually not, just evil. He's still conniving and tricky,
but he's
and
the god
still,
of tricks. That's his whole thing. He's the god of trickery.
But he's not evil at the end of it when Thanos kills him.
Loki the trickster.
The problem is with Endgame, when there's the time jumping thing, right? Loki's able to sort of, escape back in 2012, right? So, because basically in Endgame, the Loki from right after the Avengers escapes.
Okay.
So before he's had his character development.
Oh, okay.
And the problem with the Loki show is he acts like the Loki who was killed, by Thanos after he's had his development, and he doesn't act like Loki from
So it's like a continuity issue. Yeah, technical continuity issue.
Yeah, and they make because they kind of just because the whole interesting thing, I guess, with Loki being alive again, like his character arc is like reversed. Like it's not reversed, but like rewound. Same with Gamora, right? With her coming back, it's like been rewound, and I haven't seen 3 yet, so I don't know how they handle that. But Loki, they just sort of skip over it. Like they just kind of like with no explanation. He just is the way he was when he died, which doesn't make sense because there's about 3 movies of development that didn't happen.
Yeah, but he gets to keep all of his growth. That is strange. I don't know why they would do that. That's weird.
Bad writing.
Forgetful writing, I want to say. I don't want to say it's bad writing. That just seems forgetful.
It does, because I'm like, Loki was also like a fan favorite early on.
Yeah, he was
for a different reason than later. I
always
just as a villain. Yeah, I did too, and I liked him when he was evil. I liked him when he was good. He was a really good villain and a really good hero. But Loki season 2 I know is dropping. Maybe I'll give it an attempt. I did not like season 1. Did not do it for me.
Wow.
There was some cool stuff, but like I don't know. I'm still angry that they've decided to make Kang the Conqueror like the big bad. Though apparently now it might not be because that guy's in jail. But
okay,
the actor. But I wanted it to be Mephisto because I think what you need to do after Thanos, you can't have like the multiverse thing. Because multiverses, it doesn't work very well. Like
it just allows for too much fuckery. That's the problem. Now, I love the concept of them, but like when you get like the Doctor Strange multiverse, dude, it just got out of hand. It got out of hand so fast.
Yeah, but if you have Mephisto, who's like kind of the mystical enemy, that's a shoe-in for like all of these kind of mystical here. Like they've added Shang-Chi. They're adding like Black Knight, like they're adding all of these different kind of more, more magically inclined heroes.
I still want to see a Doctor Doom. I'm so mad we haven't seen a Doctor Doom.
I mean, frankly, yeah. We also haven't seen a good Fantastic Four, though. Yeah, don't know what's happening with that. But I heard they're showing up.
Fantastic Four already showed up, though.
Not in the MCU.
Yeah. The what's his name dude was in.
You're right. John Krasinski. Yeah, Mr. Fantastic
they've already revealed it. So like that's why I was kind of like, are we gonna get a little? I'm telling you, dude. If I get a Doctor Doom, I will take back half of what I've said about Marvel. Only half though.
It's got to be good though. It's got to be a good Doom. It better be
damn good. I'll be fucking pissed.
Yeah,
I'll be so mad.
It's very funny because Krasinski and Emily Blunt, like the actual married couple, could very convincingly play, Reed Richards and Susan Storm.
Yeah, sign up. I mean, all she does isn't she the invisibility girl?
She can turn invisible, and I believe she can produce like force fields. She's basically Violet from The Incredibles.
Literally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, all right, dude. Yeah, sign me up, dude. Emily Blunt can play anybody that can turn. Her only power is invisible, and her character development is only attached to being the love interest of Mr. Fantastic. Fine. Whatever.
She's also the sister of the Human Torch.
Yeah, but other than that's easy. That's an easy one. I'm not worried about that.
For sure. But I think, I mean, if they do a good Fantastic Four,
dude,
I'd be happy.
Sign me up.
I'd be happy.
Give me a revamp on the Silver Surfer, and give me Doctor Doom.
Yeah, didn't Doug Jones play Silver Surfer?
Come to think of it, I don't actually remember.
Because he went to our high school.
I don't know, dude.
I think he did.
I don't really recall. He looks pretty silvery the whole time.
It is Doug Jones, though the body was done by Doug Jones. The voice was done by, let me see. Looks like the voice was Lawrence Fishburne.
Oh, that's the name I remember. Yep. Lawrence
So
Fishburne.
the body was Doug Jones. The voice was Fishburne.
But yeah, dude, give me like. There's so many good villains we haven't seen yet. I'm kind of mad they went with Thanos first. Because there's so many like lesser tier ones they could have worked up to.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah. I mean,
I get it. He's like one of the world-ending ones, but there's a couple of those.
Yeah. And to be fair, they put 10 years into building him up as the baddie.
That's only because they took so many fucking breaks. They made like 3 movies in between every other major Marvel movie, and you're like, bro, no wonder you guys took a decade to make it. Jeez.
Yeah, they basically had the only other big villain was like Hydra, and then Hydra just like is gone but isn't.
Yeah, I don't know what they're doing with that.
I don't know. It's very confusing what's happening with Hydra now. Yeah, because they actually were Shield was Hydra.
Yeah, and then like I mean they did Red Skull. Red Skull was okay, I suppose.
I really liked Captain America 1. I thought Red Skull was really solid.
He was an okay villain. I'm just saying that, like, all I'm saying is everyone in every superhero has like a main arch villain, and they just have skipped like 9 of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like Spider-Man, you haven't seen Dr. Ock, you haven't seen Green Goblin, you haven't seen any of the classics. You literally have seen what's it?
Vulture. And Mysterio.
Mysterio, yeah.
Well, I mean, have you seen the 3rd Spider-Man movie?
Which one is that?
No Way Home.
The
very most recent one?
No, I don't think I have, actually.
The one after the Mephisto one?
Wait, what?
The one that's the one that's after Mysterio.
Oh. No, I don't think I have seen it, actually.
You should.
Who's the villain?
I don't want to spoil it now. Okay. If you don't know anything, you need to go and do not look up anything when you get the chance to sit down, watch the movie.
On, Disney.
Yeah, it is. Don't look up anything. Watch it. It is one of the best things that Marvel has done after Endgame.
Shit, dude, I'll go watch it right now after this.
You should.
I got time.
You should, and then let me know what you think because it is fan service in the best possible way.
And listen, dude, everyone always complains about fan service. You know, you know what the biggest argument against people that don't watch anime tell me when I tell them to watch anime is fan service.
Well, I mean, fan service with anime, it's a different context. Anime usually means like busty women or whatever, which is like
I have beef with that. I just have beef with that phrasing. I don't like that phrasing.
That's not what I mean. I mean, it's just
fan service. I don't like the connotation of any fan service because it's like, oh my god, because like to me it's like fan service. Like, oh, we gave our viewers what they wanted. Yeah, that's kind of how you keep entertaining people. You give them what they want.
That's true. You know, but just I guess watch
I'll know when I see it. One of those.
You'll know it when you see it, and you're like, okay, well, this was clearly put in for like this isn't something to add to this. Yeah. This doesn't add to the story. This is just a nod to the fans, and like, hey. You know, if you get it, you get it.
Is it a Zendaya nude scene? Thank God. I've been waiting for one of them.
It's not that.
Well, it's not going to be fan service.
She's also playing a 17-year-old, my guy.
Yeah, but she's not 17, so I don't care.
All right.
Come on now.
Touché, but it's very... You should watch it after we finish up here, which I think we'll probably need to move towards just as we're recording this pretty late. And
that's fine, dude. Yeah.
And I got work in the morning.
Yeah, me too. For sure. I'm about to just not sleep. I'm about to not sleep because you fucking hyped up this movie so much now that I forgot existed, I suppose.
Yeah, I'm shocked you haven't seen it.
No,
yeah,
what's the title of it? No Way Home?
Spider-Man No Way Home, yeah.
And they're not... Yeah, because the only Spider-Mans I've seen is the Vulture and the Mysterion one. I don't know what the... Interesting. Hold on now.
Don't look it up.
I won't.
Just,
I'm not
just watch. Good.
I'll just go
Like
click it.
if it is a blessing to you to go in and not know what's going on the first time because it's incredible. It's maybe the coolest thing Marvel's done.
Yeah, literally all I can remember from the Spider-Man is him being in Europe is the last one I remember.
Yep. So that was the Mysterio.
Yeah.
And at the end of that, he had his identity revealed by Mysterio.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Oh, okay.
So that is an important point.
As long as Happy and his aunt get together, that's okay.
Yeah.
I want an Aunt May love story.
For sure. Well, I'll leave you to watch it. We can touch base on it next time we record.
Yeah, dude.
I do want to hear what you think about it. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. I'm excited now. You're really hyping it up, so this better not disappoint me. I'll be pretty upset.
I don't think it will.
Perfect.
I don't think it will. All right. Well, that being said, I think we're going to go ahead and sign off for the night. So thank you guys for joining us for our diatribes. I guess we started talking about adaptations and then just ran with it to other places.
It's all about the journey.
Yep. There's no destination in mind, just a starting direction, and I assume we'll pick up next time we record with just talking about Spider-Man,
which is exactly where I kind of want to start, to be honest. That's
you can take Spider-Man a lot of different directions, but anyway, I hope you all have enjoyed listening to us ramble. Hopefully, we'll get Ethan on for the next one, and stay classy.